Hey Simon, how's it going?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Good. How's Montreal?
That was great. I'm here for the Lumen exhibition for the electrical industry in Quebec.
Very cool. Yeah, for listeners, we're Simon's doing this from Montreal, from a conference hallway. The space looks pretty beautiful, actually.
Well, it's Montreal. I feel like they really dial in the brutalism in a
Yeah,
beautiful way.
yeah,
So,
that actually is a pretty accurate description. Yeah, so today we're doing really remote, not even in the same city, and we're talking a little bit about technical debt. When was the last time your team made a bad decision about your website? I don't mean a big bad decision, which we've seen some of those happen, but small ones, a quick fix or a workaround, a sort of we'll clean this up later decision. And, what happens with all those decisions? They're compounding. I would add into that also just like technology choice decisions, these
mhm.
types of integrations, plugins. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that expansive surface that keeps expanding as you add more things, we call that technical debt. It doesn't always have to be debt, but it's mostly when you make decisions that just increase maintainability, your security surface, like things that you just don't realize that have been accumulating all this time for multiple years until you get to a point where no one knows what anything does, no one knows why you're spending the money to maintain it, and likely things are just disconnected or broken. And that's
totally.
technical debt.
Yeah. And those decisions don't add up; they actually multiply. So the negative effect is compounding. It's not a sequential sort of negative effect. My name is Marcello. This is Simon. Uh, we are co-founders of Tennis, a B2B website design and product development agency. We do a lot of work in the sort of mid-enterprise size space and with technology startups. We see a lot of websites, a lot of digital ecosystems, and we see a lot of web debt typically before we start working with clients to help kind of unpack or unwind all of that, all of those decisions. Um, there's a concept that's typically discussed in finance, which is compounding interest. So small things left unaddressed don't just stay small, they grow. That's not an actual financial compounding definition, but compounding decisions are also happening all the time in technology. And we kind of wanted to just spend a little bit of time talking about how this happens, why this happens, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's the classic death by a thousand cuts, just the accumulation of all these small, reasonable seeming decisions that you make that just add up. They compound, I can say. Awesome.
Yeah. Before we begin, if you're interested in these types of topics and learning more, like please subscribe. Our channel's starting to grow um, modestly, and we're really enjoying it. All right, so let's define this. What do we actually mean by incremental web debt?
Yeah, like we already defined it as like it's not one big failure, it's many, many small ones. So it's like the biggest gap between what was needed versus what was shipped. Sometimes things just get baked in due to urgency. That's an issue, or budget, or the phase-based approach for everything it's good for can also be problematic if you never action those future phases. So you might have just some holdover tech or decisions from earlier phases. But some of the ways that accumulates, it's not just the maintenance layer, it's the cost of maintaining it internally as well. So design inconsistencies across your website can actually strain your marketing team or your design team or anyone trying to implement new things. Design inconsistencies or CMS structures, edge cases that you never really planned for, or edge cases that you implemented for as a one-off, but then they're just hanging around for the rest of the days of the site. Um, Third-party scripts is a big one. Those are generally never maintained because you get a subscription, maybe you install the script, you let it, set it, forget it, and until you actually forget it, right? Another big one we see too is navigation. People's businesses change and evolve, and SEO, content strategy. As that evolves, usually the navigation doesn't evolve with it. So you tend to try to fit things like a square peg in a round hole. That's probably like a good highlight of some of the things that we see accumulate.
Hmm. Yeah, I think also just technology decisions, right? Like making a lot of making a lot of technology integration plug-in decisions without a lengthy amount of due diligence. Like that stuff also adds up. I always kind of describe it as like a ball of yarn. We often get clients, I'd say most of our clients, especially if it's larger digital ecosystems, they come to us with this mishmash of technology and web debt. And it's sort of like a ball of yarn that we over time have to make straight again or simplify into a thread. Because all of these decisions have just been compounding, 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 and then there's a sort of aha moment where nothing's working, things are too challenging, inefficiencies, cost, crashing, failures, and so we end up maybe being brought in for a piece of work, but then seeing like this huge ball of yarn of technology decisions that have been made in the past that have just been compounding over time and have now created inoperability, basically.
Yeah. There was a project that we tried to scope out for an engineering firm. It didn't end up happening, but they had an internal ERP system. And I still think about this project like more often than I probably should. But the the tech was built 20 years ago. That person is no longer in the organization. There was no documentation. They kept scaling up the integrations. They're like, well, this year let's include FreshBooks. So this year let's connect it to email. But everything had scaled without anyone knowing how the fundamentals worked. So it got to this point where the actual framework that everything's running on is at its end of life and they need to replatform.
Hmm.
And if they don't replatform, when this thing goes down, it is going to take their entire business with it. What's interesting about that project is this was one of the clients that says, I don't want to pay for discovery. And like it was the ball of yarn comment that really got me remembering this because I had to explain the importance of discovery is to understand this ball of yarn. Like what connects to what? Because if we implement this new thing, it's just going to be implementing the old problems in a new framework. But ultimately, the project didn't go through because there was just a refusal when it came to the discovery process. There's no perceived value in that. So maybe that's why I
Yeah.
think about the project often is I wonder what they're up to these days. It's
um,
TikTok kind of thing.
let's talk about a concrete example. Let's talk a little bit about like a CMS mismatch. You've got a content model that was built for the original product line. Yeah, why don't we? What do you see when it comes to just like this is I think like a more basic example, but something that probably a lot of organizations are seeing,
Yeah.
feeling.
One's yeah, that's an interesting one. So you've got a CMS, you built your product line, your model. Um, Now you start adding new products to it. So you start adding new fields to the product model. And you're just adding the fields with a level of urgency because you have to get this stuff out. Everyone wants it to be visible. You're probably not taking a long view approach to the fields that you're adding. Because if you think of an entire product catalog, you should be thinking of it as a true and honest database with different dimensions and categories, colorways, like all of that stuff, right? But a good example of an edge case is maybe this one new product field that you're adding is for color. None of your other products have color. Okay, cool. You've just added a single field for all of your products for color, but only one or two products actually use that. So like that's what we'd classify as an edge case. And we see those edge cases just scale up and up and up without this long view strategy to the point that everything's disconnected. And when they want to take this product catalog, move it somewhere else, or filter it in different ways, you run into bigger and bigger problems with just the way the data has been structured. It's like what Deborah was saying on our last podcast a few ways ago. Um, the difference between a plain text field or like and a number field, that's not like a inconsequential difference.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
want to add color and you're using a plain text field, if that's a problem, you should be
Yeah.
using a completely different field. But a lot of people just default to plain text. I got to get it out. I got to write the word blue for this product. Cool, it works. Move on with my day. Move on to the next fire.
Yeah, that's a good example. I mean, I think like accessibility adds another layer to all of this, right? Because every workaround and change you make, the accessibility risk sort of speeds out the compounding negative effects or potential negative effects, because you could just consistently be pushing your product out of compliance without even knowing, and then get sued for knows how much money. Why do you think teams let this web debt accumulate?
I think oftentimes it's partly a lack of documentation. Maybe the team inherited the software and they're using what documentation they have and just sort of doing the day in, day out stuff. They don't have that long view. They weren't there when it got built. So thinking of it as a framework or infrastructure just isn't part of their role. So they've been told if you need to add this content, just add a new field. And then that spirals out of control pretty quickly because they just don't have the frame of reference from the previous build. Maybe it was a different person internally, maybe it was an agency. They don't have the context. So I think that's one of the big problems. And I mean, funny enough, it highlights the whole website as a product thing. We're always saying that website is a product because it means you've got the documentation, you have the frameworks and the thinking in place to constantly innovate and iterate on the website as a product versus just running things business as usual.
Yeah, I think also in general, I think web technology expertise are kind of niche. So like you have IT departments who understand the platform and technology in a very specific way, but it's not their priority because they're usually their IT. And then you have marketing that owns content and operation of the website, but they're definitely not technology experts. So I rarely see organizations, and it doesn't make sense for them to hire someone who's like a web technology specialist to run the website in most instances, or to run the whole web strategy. And so you've got a lot of people making decisions sort of on the fly with no real owner of the entire ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think like, these decisions get made without having the support that these companies need to make the right decisions, to be honest. I think in a lot of circumstances, I've rarely seen companies that have, like I said, like web specific experts doing this work.
No, you're spot on. That is a big issue. It's all in the handoff. The web experts
Totally.
hand it off to someone with like everything that they need to know, but not the whole context.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think another good
Totally.
one is just urgency. This is largely marketing teams running the site. What comes along with marketing is campaigns, content strategy, all of that stuff. And there's always a level of urgency and timeliness with marketing and campaigns. You got
Mm-hmm.
to get this up by then. And I think that urgency is a trap. So people will sooner get the content out rather than clean up the architecture of that content. Um, no one wants to just refactor that. Like no one's putting that in their calendar. They're always putting campaigns in the calendar because
Mm-hmm.
marketing drives the revenue. So there's just this constant level of deferring that happens when it comes to campaign releases. And like you said, it's usually a non-technical team that's making these changes. So it just accumulates and accumulates. No one wants to refactor or call up the expert to help them refactor. The urgency is kind of like that trigger, right?
Yeah. So if someone's trying to, if someone recognizes their website in this conversation, where do you start? Where do they start?
An audit, basically. I would
Yeah.
audit your CMS. Simple things like versions, number of external third-party scripts, audit the systems that connect with it or that you want to connect with it. So just mapping your current state is usually enough from a technology perspective. And also start mapping your site from a navigation perspective. Does it make sense? Are there skeletons in the closet, pages that you have taken down or unpublished, content that you've just sort of left around to rot? Like that's a really good thing to audit, because template sprawl is a huge aspect of content sprawl and tech debt. We've got 100 pages that you've unpublished because you don't want to delete them. You don't know what's there, what they connect with. That's a problem. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think like ultimately, like depending on how complex or how big the impact is, like eventually you probably need to bring in an external vendor, time or expertise to do everything that we're recommending. But at minimum, like you said, like an initial audit will just put you in a better position to make those changes in the future.
yeah. I think there's like a good gut check you can even do early on as a team. If you look at your site and you say to yourself, I would like to change this month, and your gut feeling and response is a level of fear where, oh, if I change this, this is going to break. Like that's a checkbox for there likely being a lot of technical debt. And
Mm.
then the second gut feel is, does content just take long to update because you're updating it in like 5 to 10 different places because everything's disconnected? That's another really good signal that there's tech debt that's just evolved over time.
Yeah. And then, yeah, also start to think about like ownership, like who's actually owning the entire
Yeah.
web ecosystem. Is it IT? Is it marketing? Who's this person that's going to do this work, basically? All right, I think we can call it there. Yeah, this was a good topic. We talked a lot about incremental web debt, what it is, how it compounds over time, and why smart teams sort of let it happen, and where to start addressing it. Again, documentation is like very important. It's a good starting point to kind of solving some of these problems. I think eventually, the expertise to solve this will probably be external, but at minimum, starting to build out that documentation is important. And you might find that you can fix a lot of it internally. Who knows? Last thought: if a marketing leader takes one thing from this episode, Simon, what should it be?
Uh,
Watching the guy behind you
yeah, I was like, this is really
walking 2 feet from you.
distracting. Yeah. Um, yeah, if
He's
was it
back.
if someone in marketing, if there's one thing to
Um,
take away,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I got two plugs. Like, if you treated your website as a product from day one, right? Ongoing value-based retainer or an internal team to properly support it, technical debt would likely not be a thing because you're evaluating it on a regular basis, treating it like a product, right? We've got a roadmap, we've got all that stuff. So that's my first plug. And second one is, it feels hard and changing things is scary. That's a big signal that it's time for a change. So
Nice. Mine is if it feels like it's good enough, it's probably going to cost you more money. Like good enough is or stopgaps are usually expensive changes in the
they
future.
definitely are. That's a good riddle. If it's, what is
Yeah.
it? If it's good enough,
If it's good
it's
enough,
going
it's
to
going to
cost you
cost you
more.
later. Yeah. At Tennis, we help mid to enterprise companies audit, prioritize, and address these kinds of issues. So if your site stops being a drag and starts being an asset, if this episode hits close to home, let's talk. Thanks.
Thanks. See ya.